Today we're going to talk about good writing. We are finally getting some traction in this class, and we are at the point where it's time to start really talking about the writing, not so much the research and the thought processes that build up to it, although we'll continue doing those things. They're now part of our arsenal, of our toolbox for creating advertising, but now we are ready to step into the writing section. And first, before we do any terribly serious writing, I wanted to talk a little bit about just good writing in general and things to watch out for as you're crafting your own verbiage for advertisements. And I'm thinking that this will probably help you in other classes as well. I surely hope so. But I'd like to talk in this particular video about cliches and jargon, and just a little bit about redundancy as well. Those are three banes of the writer's existence, and I really think that they're banes of the reader's existence as well. And what that means is it's not a good thing. Bane is evil and bad. So we don't want to be evil, bad writers. We want to write good, clean, fresh copy. Cliches, jargon, and redundancy are things that we don't want in our copy, whether it is for advertising or any other kind of writing. You may not be clear exactly on what they are, so I'll start by talking about that. A cliche is a word or phrase, generally, that has been overused. You've heard it a million times. You read it all the time or hear people say it, and we speak in fairly cliched language. I catch myself speaking in cliches, so even I, the wonderful writer of all times, can sometimes speak a cliche, but we definitely do not want to write cliches. Those are old, hackneyed phrases that are worn out, and we want to come up with something that's fresh instead. So examples of cliches, and you'll have a handout on D2L to go along with this, but obviously cliches are pretty stinky because somebody has actually written or put together a dictionary of cliches, and there's more than 2,000 entries in it, so that just says we have way too many cliches in our language. But just to give you some examples of what are cliches that we want to avoid in our writing, and I'm just going to randomly pick out some cliches for you. Change of heart, chew him out, chew your cud, clean slate, I haven't a clue, on cloud nine, close shave, eager beaver, eagle eye, early bird catches the worm, eat crow, fresh as a daisy, a friend in need is a friend indeed, from bad to worse, from cradle to grave, hit the nail on the head, hither and yon, kid gloves, put on your kid gloves or treat them with kid gloves. Knee-high to a grasshopper. At loose ends. Mad as a wet hen. Mad as a hatter. Maintain the status quo. Make no bones about it. Skin off your teeth. Name of the game. Neat as a pin. Nip and tuck. On the rocks. On the ropes. Once in a blue moon. One fell swoop. By a pig in a poke. Pipe down. Plumb the depths of something. Pot calling the kettle black. It's a rat race. Read between the lines. Read them the riot act. Set your teeth on edge. Settle an old score. Share and share alike. Don't split hairs. Square peg in a round hole. There are so many phrases that have been used over and over again. They become part of our everyday speech, part of the lexicon, but they're old and dried up and have no juice in them. And so what we want to do is use words and phrases that are juicy, that attract attention, but in a good way, not in a, oh, I've heard that a million times kind of way. So we want to avoid cliches, and I'll try to keep you alert to those things in your writing, but you need to police yourself as far as cliches and jargon and redundancy go, but especially cliches. They creep in, and sometimes we just don't even realize we're using them. So I'm here partly to help you realize that if they do slip into your writing. But there are also pieces or phrases, pieces of verbiage called jargon. Those things are words, jargon words are words that are specific to a certain career or field. Like police have their own jargon. 10-4, oh, I guess that's not necessarily just police. That's also CB talk. But solid sheet of ice, and the car is blue in color. I mean, these are all jargon and cliche type phrases that maybe police officers might use. Military is full of jargon. I worked for the Pentagon, and I was an editor for the Pentagon and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Spent 80% of my days trying to get the jargon out of their writing because that's so normal for them. Things like deploying and theater of operations and interdicting and surveilled, et cetera, et cetera. The TV shows that we watch, especially the ones that are CSI or about, and there's so many of them that are about police work and detective work, there are a lot of jargon words in those, and we want to avoid those. If we find words that are jargon words, we need to translate them for the readers or the viewers or the hearers of our advertising. That's part of our job as good writers, is to actually translate these words that people might not understand into verbiage that they do understand. It doesn't do us any good if we're using words that our audience does not understand. So we've talked about cliches, which are old hackneyed phrases, worn out. Need to get rid of those. Jargon words that are specific words to a certain kind of pursuit, like police work or medical areas have all kinds of jargon that we need to translate for the people that we are trying to appeal to in our advertising. And then the third kind of verbiage that is something that we want to avoid is redundancy. Now, redundancy is just a repetition of something that you've already said. And I find that to be one of the most prevalent things in the writing that I edit from everyone, not just students. But there are lots of phrases that we use fairly regularly, but we don't necessarily realize that they are redundant until perhaps it's pointed out. I'm going to just go over a few, but there are quite a number of them in your handout. Like at the hour of noon. Well, we just say noon. We don't have to say at the hour of. We don't need any of those words. In real life, he was. Well, he was because we know he's living, or at least was living at the time that we were talking about him. Made out of iron. Why can't we just say it's iron or it's metal or it's glass instead of made out of? Gave birth to a baby boy. Well, can you give birth to a 14-year-old boy? A 70-year-old boy? No. So you don't need baby in there. Had a baby might work even better. So boiling down what we write or what we're going to say in, let's say, a television ad is the best thing that we can do. You need to spend some time when you go back and proof your writing to boiling down and boiling out some of those extra words that are actually redundant or not needed. I know for some papers, I know you're going to say this is not true, but I know for some papers that you might write, you might want to pad them just a little bit and add some extra words because maybe you have a 1,200 word count that you have to meet. But typically in advertising, if we're writing a radio spot or we're writing a TV spot or we're writing a PSA for radio, we need to have as few words as possible, or let's not say as few words as possible. That's probably not the right thing to say. You need to have only the most effective words and have them fit your time frame. So boiling down what you say and boiling out the redundancies and the unnecessary words is a very important part of good writing for that kind of a medium. So cliches, jargon, redundancy, 3 things that we really want to sift out of our writing. Throw those away. Shoo, 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 go. Yuck. Ooh, get rid of those cliches. We want them out, out, out. So those are things that we need to think about not doing in good writing. But there are some things that you definitely want to think about doing in good writing as well. And one of those is writing with concision or writing concisely. And that is what I was just talking about with boiling it down. You want to write the fewest number of words to say things most effectively, without all that extra wordiness, without all those extra words. So being concise is very important. Being clear is equally important. And sometimes being concise certainly assists being clear. You need to make sure that your sentences or your phrases don't have more than one meaning that would cause your reader or the person listening or watching to be confused. And one of the best ways to test your writing is to read it out loud to yourself or read it out loud to someone and say, does this sound okay? If you stumble when you're reading it to yourself or to someone else, it's a good sign that the person that's reading it in your audience or hearing it in your audience is going to have trouble with it as well. So reading that out loud is really going to help you in clarity, making sure that your words and your sentences are clear. Another thing that's very important in this class and in good writing of any kind is sentence structure. So if you have not recently reviewed some of your grammar rules, you might want to do that. We're at a point in your education where this is an upper level class. So I'm not going to go back and teach you grammar, but I will expect you to use good sentence structure to avoid run-on sentences. That's where you slam 2 sentences together without a conjunction, or another option is to use a period and have it be 2 separate sentences. But sentence structure, clear phrasing is very important. Good grammar is very important. And I'd like for you all to become a little more careful about just typos. And we all have them. We all make typos. But going back and proofing your work once, twice, maybe having somebody else review it for you, because certainly in an office or an agency or a company, you'll have people who will edit your copy, and sometimes you'll have many, many people who will edit your copy. But even before you give it to them, don't you want to be proud of what you've done? And you don't really want them to catch you in a lot of errors. If they catch a lot of errors, chances are they're probably not going to keep you on for a very long time. So get in the habit of reviewing your copy and maybe reading it out loud in that review. And I think that that's going to make a big difference in your copy. If you slam it out and send it immediately to me or give it to your boss in a business, I think that you will probably have to reap the consequences of that. So I almost said reap what you sow, but that's a cliche. So I went mentally, I stopped. But you will reap the consequences of what you write, and your boss is going to care whether you use good grammar and sentence structure, and whether your writing is clear, and whether it's concise or whether it's wordy. And most bosses in agency work and most people elsewhere will also notice if your writing is full of cliches. A lot of us fuss about, especially sports coverage in the media, because it's so full of cliches. How many times have I heard, oh, they're shooting from outside the ark? Well, is Noah and the ark there? No, it's that half circle that's on the court. It's not an ark. It's against the glass. You know, there's just so many cliches in sports, and it's so hard to avoid it. But the best writing avoids it, and that's true of all kinds of writing, not just sports writing. So those are just a few points, key points about good writing. I would say keep your dictionary and a thesaurus near you. If you don't want the hard copy version of it, access dictionary.com and thesaurus.com regularly. They can help you find fresh words instead of the old cliche words if you're not sure which one to use. You can double check meanings of words so that you're using the right word. And that's very important too. We have all kinds of tools at our fingertips nowadays that we might have had to have gone to the library for, or gone to some other kind of resource for. But now we've got it right there. So we don't have a lot of reasons to write bad copy. And I know that you all are going to grow a lot this semester in copywriting, and we're getting started right now. I was going to say, I actually had a cliche coming to mind, but I'm going to avoid it. And I hope that you will too. And I look forward to reading your writing, and we're going to be talking further about writing this week with talking about taglines and slogans. So I'll see you on D2L.